how come the Rorschach is up there? How is death looked upon in the Rorschach? If you mention it twice or 3 times, remember what we had to write down? Morbid, how it says morbid thinking? Preoccupation with death. Do you know the stories that we had in Ireland before going to bed? Because, you know, we only had 2 rooms, and there was 25 of us living in the house. How the stories, we would talk about who is dying in the neighborhood, and who has died, and about our own relatives who had died, and where they're all buried. We would have many just talking about on our way to sleep. Now, like, I don't recommend that for families here, because parents have told me, like, there's no way I will do that. I will have nightmares. But I don't ever remember having a nightmare, because my parents talked about death, talking about who died, and so they're talking about, you know, it would be somebody, a friend of, close friends that my parents knew from childhood, because they're still living in the same house, far nobody moved, and we would have this. But when I was learning the Rorschach, I was taken back. Once is okay, but not twice. Remember that? So starting out with silence. Silence is an enormous part of Asia. So in the train, people will sort of, they will sit. So they will sit with family, just everybody's sitting, and the children. Everybody's silent. No, hardly a word. So it's very different than taking the subway in New York, let's say, you know, or in London or Moscow. Japan, I noticed, like in Tokyo, right in the heart of the city, or in Shanghai, hardly talking. So when we foreigners start talking in English, our voice just echoes through the carriage. But if we talk this way, sort of like, you know, are you sure we're on the right train? It's very different. But when we like, well, I hope this train is going the right direction. Do they know what they're doing? Or saying, oh, that's a strange looking area for writing. It's comments like that. Almost everybody there knows just as much English. But they would never show that up. It is kept silent until you must earn your stay to know what they want to tell you, and earn your time. Be silent with them. That's not only the silent in not talking, but silence in the noise we make. Silent in the way our shoes touch the ground. You know, silent in the way we drop the cup connects with the table, silent in the way we turn the page. You notice that sometimes people will turn the page like this? But in Japan, there is this. Let go. Let go. It's treated as if like it's this document from ancient times. You don't sit on it, you don't bend it, you don't, it's kept like, ooh, this is very, so you're on the train going into Tokyo, and people could be reading the paper. But they're not going to open it out like this and turn around the page. They have a way for folding it and turning it that you hardly notice. It's really beautiful to watch in this. So what does this have to do with death, or what's that have to do with? Go ahead, ask. What does it have to do with death? And culture. It's like, example, how many times we hear in couples counseling, first the wife comes in And they said, what about, well, he doesn't want to come and he doesn't say anything anyway, so it wouldn't do any good. Yeah. And actually, it can be very powerful when they come in and they're in silence. It's so enriching to see the fear they have about a divorce is on the way and how it's ripping apart their mind. It's the same with death, like you just said. In one hospital I was with, it was the first time they had a death in America. It was an immigrant family from China. They all were new here. It was their mother who died. This is intensive care unit where every moment of the bed has to be cleaned and for the next person coming into through the ER to get that person in. Somebody is waiting to use that bed. So when the person died, and I was making contact more because I saw them in the emergency room, he said to me, is there any way we could have about 10 or 15 minutes, close the door with our mother? And this had never been requested because when a person dies, sort of like this legally, there's something about having the door open so that nobody will steal anything. We want to spend some time with our mother. And I think there was 3 children and the father. So I said, I think so. So I go to the head nurse and she says, okay. So they did that. They closed the sliding door. You could still look in through the glass door. And I just sat outside. And I said, I'm going to sit out here just to make sure nobody interrupts you. When you come out, you know, we'll be fine. Just take your time. That was the greatest gift that I gave them. It's like it just, this hospital is just magic. It's and flowers and chocolate. What they said was this moment that they had with their mother, all in this kind of silent prayer, or some people call it, just saying nothing, just maybe somebody might be crying, but it is, and he explained it, it's the spirit of their mother is still there. It's their spirit that's still there. It's this, like you mentioned, the heart earlier. It's their heart has stopped. Their heart is still going. It's the reality of the heart stopping, the spirit leaving, and they still have both the heart and the spirit. The thankfulness, thanking this sort of like the world that they're okay and they're in good health, and to take care of this spirit, take care of you, have been really good to my mother. She took good care of us. She really was good wife, good mother, good person. So, like, I mean, imagine 15 minutes in your life, and there's a dead person, and you said the greatest gift the hospital gave was this. They didn't talk about, we want to look at all the records to see how my mother died, or did the doctor do everything right, or what was wrong with the nurses. No, this was like, no. Whoever, mom was very sick, it doesn't matter. Everybody did everything. So that sort of moment, and that's what, now, I was in contact with them all the time. And so, and I gave them the phone number. I never told them, like, if I'm not here, go to somebody else. I knew if I said that, that would, like, I'd lose them. I said, you can call me, because I wasn't there every day, and I had a practice. I said, you know, I can arrange to come over from where I'm at. It's important to know. Birthdays. Anybody know why birthdays are really important in America? Why is that the case? They're very important here. And how people honor birthdays sometimes for anniversary. in Ireland, for example, in Asia, birthdays are seen very different. It's, in Ireland would be the day you die is more important in your life, you know, so like you're not, this comes from the wisdom of the Hin, you know, the after effect of life. It's when you die you become more important, like this fellow that died in the village. I was at this hospital. I never told anybody when I was born what year or date. And I was looking through the calendar, trying to look like, because I was going to take a trip. And then I saw Sean's birthday written in. I go, wow, I was really uncomfortable with it. I'd never seen that before. And one time they did a thing for my birthday, surprise, they bought a cake. It was really uncomfortable for me. I mean, I didn't say anything. I mean, the intent was right to the fine, but it was sort of like something I wasn't used to. We don't honor our birthday in Celtic. It's not so much it's bad luck, but remember the honor of your death is far more important than your birth or anything else. That's far more than in that way. So, mirrors. What does mirrors have to do with death, by the way? Mirrors are many times in cultures, the mirrors in the house are covered. Mirrors are covered. Well, you know, it's done, I see it done in Asia, I see it done in Europe, and particularly in Celtic. What else is covered, but not so much anymore, is the inside the house. There's a curtain for the window. If some other body died in another house, so when the body went by, it didn't shake, it didn't didn't confuse the spirit to see the window opened, that it might come towards the window. So the window is, and you waited till the person passed by, and then you went outside. So the mirror is this part covering. What do we in Irish we call the mirror a looking glass. It's the glass looking at you, not you looking at the glass. You know what I mean? Sort of looking glass. You know, sort of like. So it's the mirror looking at you. You know, and so there is this thing about the mirrors.
I didn't get quite familiar. You say they cover them up?
Yeah.
When somebody in the family dies?
When a member dies, yes.
But why?
Because the idea is that, or if they die in the hospital, no matter where they die, it could be in another country. Because if they come to visit, and then you have to open the window on top and in the bottom, if they open the window or open the door a little bit so it can come in and go out. If they come, the mirrors will throw them off. It will confuse them having to leave the house.
By the door?
Yeah.
Okay.
And any mirrors in the house, all the rooms, all the mirrors in the house, either turned around, taken down, but they're covered in some sort of cloth.
All over Asia, or just?
It's all not everywhere in Asia. Some places in Asia don't do that. Like there's many different, like say in Korea, there's Protestants who have been converted. They don't do that. Have a different way for doing that. But the thing about the mirrors will lose the spirit. It's not. It will confuse the spirit. It will frighten them, or they'll go and hide in the house, and they'll have to stay around. If you have a house that you think is haunted, the same thing. You cover the mirrors for so many days, so the spirit can get out and open the door. So because there may be mirrors that kept them in there, and they still can't get out. And turn the light on if you have it like electricity, and there's this superstition to leave the light out, leave the spirit out. The window opens sometimes if they have a window the top and bottom, a little bit, or side to side, either way. But it's good to have two openings, in the house, somewhere like at the door or a window, have some two openings, in that way. Usually, for about different groups have different times. Usually, if it's when they're cremated, after their cremation, it's taken off. But other is there's a thing called 777, which is 49. There is 7 returns to life and 7 returns to death in some Asian beliefs. So on the 49th day is when the last death occurs, and that's when they really leave. So you can go on for the first 49 days of some people will keep the mirrors on. Some people, you know, there's little various. So what about the mirrors in your car? You have to cover those too. You know? So it's this continuous sort of thinking about what mirrors can do. You know? And leaving the window open a little bit so it doesn't get locked in the car. So there's some modernization, some changes in that. When I went back to China with the California Psychological Association, who had that trip to China about 3 years ago, I don't know how many of you went on it. We went around to mental hospitals. And one of the things I discovered, in China they have this paid whalers. These are people who made a living. They would whale to get the funeral going. And because of the industrial change that's occurring, these people are sort of like they're losing their business. You know, they're not as needed anymore. They have other kind of whalers, which is like groups that will come and do it, not just the one person. So these were people that actually made their living going around from funerals to funerals, practicing whaling, the Chinese version of whaling, to get people to cry. A very similar thing in Korea. So, and they will sometimes, in China, they will pay people, if they have money, to come to the funeral of my father or my mother. So it shows that, you know, we really love her, and we will show that she was a very loved mother, you know, in that way. It makes sense, right? So the mirrors is you'll see it in. I mean, Ireland, Mexico, and the Philippines is probably the 3 most Catholic countries in the world. But when somebody dies, it becomes suddenly very pagan. Very sort of, all of that is, wouldn't even leave a priest into the house. Or a nun, they have to change clothes. They're not allowed to come in their own outfit, because it will distract the attention from the dead person to the priest. All the attention is going to the dead person. This is the only time in life when you're supposed to get attention to you, is when you're dead. So, I mean, you're not supposed to do that for people, you know. You see what I mean? Like, or you're a soldier, you know. No, they would have clothes for people to change, you know, like the local police, you know. No, when they come, you have to change clothes out in the stall with the cows and come in.
Maybe that's a good.
Huh?
Maybe that's a good.
It probably was a good thing, yeah. So birthdays, white. What do you know about white in the Asian?
It's the color of mourning, isn't it?
It's the color
of mourning, I think.
Well, it's color of mourning, but how did it come about in the Roman Empire? It was black. And that spread out where all the Catholics went. Why in Asia white? Well, there is this thing called, I think it comes from India, called the story of the white rabbit. The white rabbit was, you know, out in there was a lot of white rabbits back then, but the Buddhist goes for a walk into the woods. You ready for this? You okay?
Definitely.
All right, goes for a walk. And you know, when you go for a walk in the woods, it's like you ever been in Yosemite, you go 5 yards into the woods and you're lost. You know, like, which way did they come in? Like, it all looks the same. So, gets lost in the woods and gets tired and gets hungry and builds a fire and says, well, now I have to hunt. And he'd forgotten his art of hunting. He'd been living in the monastery. So a white rabbit comes up to him and says, Buddha, you've got a great fire going, you're very hungry, I'll jump into the fire, and then I'll be cooked, and then you'll have some food, and you'll be able to find your way back home. So the Buddhist was so impressed with this rabbit, the white rabbit, says, well, actually, I'm just from what you said, he was inspired. He says, how about if I take you back with me to the temple, to our monastery, and you can tell them the story of how we met. You know, that you were going to give your life, the white rabbit. You're going to give your life to save my life. So what happened was, when somebody died, people started to wear white in honor of the white rabbit. So I heard from, you know, any of you remember Dora Koff, the used to do sound play therapy from Zurich? You know, she spent a lot of time in Asia training for children with traumatized children from like earthquakes and etc. It became very popular in Japan, and she lived in Zurich. Well, she told me, because I spent some time with her in Zurich, that when America was first flying to the moon, or not flying to the moon, how did you go to the moon? You rocket to the moon, I guess. Mm-hmm. That they made a white rabbit. You know, what do you call it when you make things out of mud? What's it?
Adobe?
You know, people who make
ceramic?
These, ceramic, yeah. They made a ceramic white rabbit. Because Japan was saying, and some Asian countries, you're flying to the moon, you're going to disturb the rabbit. The rabbit meaning like the spirit where we're going to go after we die. So in honoring of the white rabbit, I was told, I don't know if this is true or not, they left a white rabbit in respect, not to disturb, to honor the white rabbit of the moon. So white became the honorable color of death, of grief. And so it's wore, sometimes widows and widowers will wear this all the time. They might wear just a white scarf, you know, in that way, because, you know, it's a cleaning white is very, very difficult to keep things clean when you're wearing white, you know. Voice. We mentioned a little bit about that, you know, how voice is manners. What does that have to do with dying? So, when you're with a person who's dying, or you're going to cremation, the voice needs to be very low, so it doesn't overpower the spirit of the person. So your voice, just kind of like in therapy, you know, if a person's talking loud, you talk a little bit lower, and they come down to you, you know, without saying the words, take a deep breath, they take a deep breath, you know, because your voice comes down. Voice, and the other part is opening the mouth too much, like when you yawn, cover the mouth. We cover the mouth because it's an opening to the stomach. It's an opening to where the nourishment is, so things don't pop out, or you are giving away. You're giving away. It's unmannerly to open your mouth in the company of others. So if you yawn, you cover.
Is that in general, or just when someone is?
Yeah, all the time, actually, yes, yeah. So the mouth is a very important part of not exposing your, like when you laugh without opening your mouth. Do you ever, you know, like when people say, here, my jaw dropped, you don't drop your jaw. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, yeah, that kind of thing. So in China there was this issue of an Australian poster. It was about Australian running shoes or something. It was a woman who was laughing with her boyfriend or somebody, and her mouth was open. And the Chinese were very disturbed about it because her mouth, it was a big poster. Her mouth was opened too much. And people had some difficulty with that. I mean, it would be just really beautiful here now, kind of like that laughter she was shown, really delightful. I'm running with these shoes. I think it was a shoe advertisement or something. You see the kind of subtleness of what manners is, all of these kind of ways that it's okay to yawn, but this is sort of the different, sometimes the conflict with some of the ethics that people talk about in culture and counseling is that this family wants to see you. Everybody wants to see you. Uncle, auntie, everybody. And their friends. Because your word has, like it, you get invited to the weddings, you get invited to the deaths, they bring you presents. You don't give them presents. You don't say to them, thank you. They say to you, thank you, because you're more important than them. But Asian people sometimes say in America, Americans say too much thank you. It's like, like you're in a Chinese restaurant, you offend the person who comes to clean the table by saying thank you, because they see themselves as like more labor. They should be saying to you, thank you for coming into the restaurant. It's the other way around. It's sort of like we seem more as the superior in our role. We say thank you when they hand you the check. Sorry. They say thank you, pardon me. They say thank you. They say thank you to you giving me the check. Thank you for helping me.
Okay, so can we give him a little nod or something?
Well, that's very good. Yes. You're welcome. That's what you could say. Just a little bow like that. The head going down, that's kind of, you don't go down like this, like, sort of like, but that little, yes, you're welcome. Then it's sort of like, there's too many thank yous going on. Thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for this. So as you might notice sometimes, if you go just here in San Francisco, people who are born here, you don't hear many times thank you until you have paid and you walk out in the restaurant. Because they don't say thank you for everything. Or please could you give me some more water? They are saying please, thank you for coming in. So do you see this sort of role we are in our connection to, so when a person dies and you are and they invite you to come to the wake or to the wedding, you are very important. But as you know, we have to be conscious of confidentiality and all of these things. When I get invited by Asians, I go. I appear, I'm there for the meal, and I go up to the, I really enjoy this. But I don't say thank you for inviting me. They say thank you for coming. This was a very nice experience for me. And I don't say, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, something like that, sort of like keep that objective. So why? Because it's so much a part of their culture of trust and manners